Welcome to the second season of Trophy Moments and a Few Firsts with me, Keith Baldwin. Sponsored by Spikes Trophies, where you can reach Spikes at gospikes.com or one of the 3 locations in the Delaware Valley. Today, I've got a special guest, Dave Bookbinder. And David is a business valuation expert for Haefele Flanagan, an accounting firm that I know very well. And he's a best-selling author of the book New ROI. And also, he is a podcaster. And he has a podcast, Behind the Numbers, that he's done since 2018 that I was a guest on. And so, David, welcome to my podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, David, for my audience, how do you become a business valuation expert?
Well, in my case, not on purpose. I kind of thought I was going to be a wealth manager, honestly.
Okay.
But I was taking courses at Drexel at night while working at the IRS during the day and working on my MBA and looking for something beyond the IRS when I graduated and found a position advertised on the job board. And it sounded an awful lot like the things I was learning in grad school, and it was for a valuation consultant position. So that's how I got started.
So you stumbled into it. It wasn't something that you were looking to do.
Do you know anybody who wakes up one day or at birth and says, I'm going to grow up to be a valuation professional? No, I wanted to be a hockey player, Keith. All right? The fact that I couldn't skate was probably a little bit of a deterrent, but and then from there, kind of grew up in corporate finance, still doing valuation, but worked my way up the food chain, doing buy-side and sell-side mergers and acquisitions, raising debt, asset securitization, and at some point I realized that valuation really was what interested me the most.
So you've been doing it for a while.
I measure it in dog years.
Okay, how many dog years?
I think, I don't know, 5.
So now you're an evaluator of business valuation. And what's the new ROI? How do you become an author from that?
Again, not on purpose. So the story around the new ROI, return on individuals, is this.
So it's not return on investment, which is traditionally what ROI is.
That's the twist. That's the new ROI, return on individuals.
Okay.
And in my world, besides valuing businesses, I've always valued intellectual property assets. And one of those intangibles is people. And I never thought that my profession told the whole story about capturing the true value of people. And, oh, by the way, every CEO on the planet pounds the table and says, our people are our most valuable asset. But where do those people live on the balance sheet? Well, spoiler alert for your audience, they don't. Normally people think of people as an expense, it's salaries and benefits. Yep. So had an inspiration to write something, an article about how we value people in my world and how maybe we can do a little bit better at it. And folks started to show up and tell me that you've got to keep going. And then the article became a series, and then ultimately it wound up becoming a book. And a second book.
Oh, really? I didn't know that you had a second book. What's the second
book? Is the new ROI, Going Behind the Numbers. So it's a compendium of the conversations that I've had on my show, Behind the Numbers. So
how do you evaluate individuals?
It's complicated. I don't know that we have the whole enough time to really delve into
it
here.
I'm old, so give me the Cliff Note version.
But I'm going to give you the money shot here, okay? Here's the deal. When you think about it, my lens as a valuation professional and thinking about valuing people, yes, we can do a better job in how my profession values people, but my contention is nobody gives a rip until people are on a balance sheet. So my lens is, and the mountain that I'm climbing is to change the conversation about how to treat people, because it impacts the value of your business. It starts with leadership, so it starts at the top. Everybody's got to drink that corporate Kool-Aid and do the right thing. But if you have the proper leadership and you build the right culture, you create an environment of engagement. And most employees show up to work disengaged. 3 out of 10 people show up actually interested in being there. The other 7 could care less. But if you do those things and you create that engagement, you get the discretionary effort, which leads to greater profitability, which leads to greater enterprise value. And that is the essence of the new ROI.
So culture and engagement are big buzzwords now. Mm-hmm. So how do you evaluate a culture? You go and talk to the people when you go and evaluate a business?
Well, here's the thing. I'm not actually performing that in the way that maybe you're thinking in your head, right?
Okay.
So I'm doing it as an aspirational thing. I've got to play within the guardrails of my industry and how we value human capital.
Yep.
And again, not enough time to get into that and how we make the sausage that way, but I'm more of an evangelist for the idea and demonstrating that if you're doing these things, you can increase your enterprise value.
So that was Behind the Numbers. That's the podcast. That's how that came to be.
So
To get the word out.
Behind the Numbers was born when the first book dropped. I got an opportunity to be a guest on some shows at RVN Television, and the owner of the network thought I was an interesting guest and said, "How'd you like your own show?" So I said, "Yeah, sure, that sounds like fun. Let's do it." And in thinking about what am I going to call this thing, Behind the Numbers was where I landed, because the idea was to tell stories about what really matters most in business. And in my world, everything is measured by the numbers. But the real magic happens behind the numbers. And it was supposed to be about teasing out the ideas about the contributions of people. And the show has evolved now over the past 6 or 7 years, whatever it is, into leadership and anything business related for the business ecosystem, with a primary emphasis on the people aspect.
So do you find that there's a lot of leaders out there that recognize the importance of people, or are they still numbers driven?
Yeah, the good news is I think people are starting to get it. And look, I'm not the only person on the planet that's talking about this, obviously. I may be the only person in my profession, I think, still that's talking about this.
Has the pandemic brought spotlight on it? Has it changed pre and post pandemic?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because before, think of your old fashioned investment banker types, right? You need to be in the office every day, and you need to be in the office until midnight if you're going to be successful. Pandemic forced them to let go of the rope, because now their people weren't coming into the office, let alone being there till midnight. And they had to trust, and maybe they were apprehensive about that. But what they came to learn was, people can be trusted, and if you treat them like people, they're going to come through for you. So I think people really are starting to get it.
So that did have did you see a dramatic change? Was it a slight change? Was it incremental change? Or did you wake up and have your podcast and start interviewing people after and say, boy, that's a dramatic difference?
It was incremental. It happened over time, because in the early days, there was still resentment of people working from home. And look, I'll be honest with you, when you've got some younger professionals who didn't know any differently and coming into the workforce, now they're just working from home full time. They only know what they know. They don't know what they don't know. So how do you build them into your culture? You had to do it remotely, and it started with trust. And it took time for people to let go. And look, honestly, there's still some folks out there that are now, you hear them every day, return to work is mandatory. And what are you finding? That the firms that are not making return to work mandatory generally seem to be more successful. The people seem to be happier, and they're going to retain their people longer.
So people that are a little bit more flexible.
Yeah.
And listen to their people.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the younger generation, time is very valuable. And sometimes it's not the raises, it's the quality time.
Yeah, it's way more than the money. What I've learned in my journey to prove that people are a company's most valuable asset is that it really is mission and purpose. And it sounds trite because you hear it so much, but you hear it so much because it's true. And it's not just the younger professionals that want it. It's the seasoned professionals that want it too.
And that comes from leadership.
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to, you're interviewing the leaders, trying to project that. That's the goal of Behind the Numbers. Yeah,
I've had some great guests like yourself who are, walking testimonials for doing the right thing around the people and reaping the benefits, at an enterprise level for that. What you've built is just amazing.
So I'm going to go and take you to trophy moments. In your life, you've done a lot. What's a trophy moment that you had? Well, something that stuck out that is paramount to who you are.
That's an easy question for me, and I'll tell you why. Because I never intended to write the new ROI Return on Individuals, and it was just a great journey to prove that people are your most valuable asset. But somebody actually turned that first book into a play. They got playwrights, actors, and got a venue, and developed a script and acted out 3 vignettes that demonstrate the true value of people. And you talk about a trophy moment, that's just surreal.
So where was that at?
That was held down here in Philadelphia. It was a one-night thing. It's available for conferences. If you're thinking of doing a conference and you don't want to have the usual artist or magician or another keynote speaker, that's a thing that's definitely a difference maker.
So it's a video of the 3-part play?
No. They would actually
Come out and
they could do that. Yeah. It was
okay.
called the new ROI Experience, and it was a great night. It was networking. It was the play, the performance, and then it was a networking of discussion about what people learned and took away from the actual performance. The actors were inspiring, man. I got to tell you, they all said the same thing. They were all truly delighted to be a part of a project like this because they've never done anything like this. And when I was at the table read, you talk about a trophy moment and then seeing it in real life. Yeah, that was it.
So no, take me back. That's too quick through that process. So you wrote your book. When did you write it?
It dropped, I think, in 2017.
2017. How long did it take you to write it?
God, a couple of years. Okay. Because again, I didn't ever have a deadline. I didn't know where it was going. People would ask, what's your plan?
Did you just start writing?
It was a passion project for me. I only wrote when I was inspired, and unfortunately, that was usually like between 2 and 4 a.m. Vivid memories because I would try to capture the idea before it would disappear. So down to the office and start typing out, at least fleshing something out. So
it just would hit.
Yeah.
And you'd wake up and okay, I've got to get this thought down in paper, and it could be 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. I never sat down and said, okay, today I'm going to work on chapter or whatever, because there was never a chapter, Keith. It was always whatever was going to happen next. Yeah, it just came about organically.
And it started to come together.
Yeah.
So now you publish it after 2 years of hard work in 2017. From the time you publish it to your trophy moment, what's that time frame like?
It was probably another year, 18 months, something like that. It wasn't long.
So did you get a call from somebody who said, I just read your book and I've got a great idea for a 3-part play?
I actually met them here at the Pyramid Club. They sat me down and said, we'd like to do this. What do you think? And of course, yeah, by all means. How do we do that? It's mind-blowing. You talk about a trophy moment, yeah.
So somebody just read the book, got inspired, had an idea, and came to you with the idea.
Yeah, it was 2 individuals in this market in the Philadelphia area who were inspired by it. And
were they actors?
No, these are business leaders who brought it to life. They hired the actors, and they got the playwright to put it all together.
Or what was your involvement in that process?
Well, I got to read it, of course, to make sure that it was true to what the message of the new ROI was, and of course it was. Yeah, it was inspirational.
Wow, how many people were at the performance?
Whatever the venue was, it was sold out. Yeah, so I would say probably several hundred.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, it was an intimate night of networking with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not expect that answer. I've gotten a lot of different answers on this podcast. That's pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. It still makes the back of the hair on the back of the neck stand up when I talk about it.
Yeah, to have somebody just out of the blue come to you off of your idea and say, that's a trophy moment.
You talk about attracting the right people and messages resonating, and that's what happens.
So how many times has this been performed in various groups?
That was a one-off thing. It was a special occasion, and like I said, it's available if others want to do it. But yeah.
So if somebody wants to do it, they contact you?
And I'll get them in touch with the right people, sure.
Okay. And then a first. What's something that you haven't done, you've always wanted to do, whether it's a bucket list item or some quest that you want to go on or something that you've never done before?
Yeah, that's also an easy one. And I'm not going to be able to live the bucket list thing, the first, in the true way I would like to. So I'll tell you what it is and how it has to get modified. So what I wanted to do, what was on my bucket list, was I wanted to see my favorite band perform live at Red Rocks Coliseum in Colorado. Favorite band is Rush. And Neil Peart died several years ago, and they stopped touring prior to that. So it doesn't look like I'm going to get to have that happen, but I still would like to see a show at Red Rocks.
That's on my bucket list. I'm going to Colorado in August, and I'm hoping to see I don't know who's going to be there. And me and my wife are thinking about going next year to go see something at Red Rocks. I've never been there either.
You're going to have to tell me about it and what the accommodations are like, because I got to get that done.
So you're a Rush fan?
Yes, sir.
How many concerts have you been to?
I stopped counting.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
You've traveled to see them?
Do we have another 30 minutes to do it?
Absolutely.
I've only traveled to see them in New York and Vegas, I think. Yeah. but I've seen every show that came through Philly.
For how many years?
Since way back, I would say Farewell to Kings, so 78.
So that's your number one band? That
Yeah.
Yeah. Had they ever played at Red Rocks?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, it didn't become a bucket list item for me until, unfortunately, latter part of the career, and then everything else happened.
And the drummer.
Yeah. So the takeaway for your audience is, as my dad used to say, it's later than you think. If you've got something you want to do, you get it done, because you never know what's going to happen, right?
Hear that, audience? That's a learning moment that Mr. Bookbinder just gave you.
And it was from Mr. Bookbinder, because I'm Dave. Mr. Bookbinder is my dad. That's what he said. So yes, you got that from the true Mr. Bookbinder.
Which is, do it while you can.
It's later than you think. Later than you think.
Because you never know. You never know if the drummer of the band is not going to be there.
Yeah.
You never know if that opportunity is not going to present itself again.
Yep. You don't know what your health is going to be.
You don't know if you're going to be alive tomorrow.
Yeah. So just do it.
Yeah. So
that's from Nike, by the way. Just do it.
They didn't get that from you.
No royalty checks coming my way on that one.
So take us back to your second book.
Yes.
When did that come out?
That dropped in 22.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not good on the actual dates and remembering, because, again, I never
Right.
intended to write these things, and I give away more than I sell, because it truly is about getting a message out to the world and making a dent in the universe.
It's a passion.
Yeah, it's about changing the conversation about how people are treated from an accounting perspective, from a valuation perspective, and from a corporate culture perspective.
So the second book, are you writing a third book?
Not as I stand here today.
You're not waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning?
No, that's the good news. I only write when I'm inspired, so.
So you haven't been.
Have not had that bolt.
So what's the where do you take book one to book two? What's the difference? What's the journey that you take your readers on?
Okay, so the first book was the journey to prove that people are a company's most valuable asset. It's a lot about leadership and culture. There's a little bit of math and valuation stuff in there, just because I have to, right?
It's your job.
Yes. So the second book is about more execution. It's kind of more of the playbook, where I'm talking with folks who have been there, done that. What have they done? In addition to some of the other writings that I've done to bring folks up to speed on the latest and greatest thinking and progress that's happening around this message.
So is it a mix from customers, podcast people that you've interviewed? Is it a mix?
The folks that have been on the show are either, they could be CEOs, they could be CFOs, they could be consultants. It's anybody who's a part of that journey and progress who's made a difference. And just as a quick takeaway for your audience, one of the biggest things I've learned from talking, especially with CEOs, is that you've got to be intentional, and it takes time. So you can't just put the ping pong table in a break room and just say, okay, here's your culture, have at it. People need to know that you're serious about culture change, and it takes 18 to 24 months until it's embedded in the DNA. And I had one guest on, actually a couple, but one in particular, who has a no assholes policy. And he said the difference was, once he enforced the no assholes policy, that's when people started to get it. And oh, by the way, for your audience, assholes are not a protected class. So you can actually fire somebody for violating an no assholes policy. Am I allowed to say assholes on your podcast?
Yes.
Too late for that.
But
Taylor will just bleep it if we have to.
That's all right. It's funny that you should say that, because we have one, no asshole policy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to people, other leaders, about that. And the people that are intentional, as you say, I find that more times than not, they have that type of policy.
Yeah.
But it's hard, especially as a leader, when you have somebody that could be a top performer.
Oh, yeah.
A top salesperson, a top programmer who's an asshole. And it is, you're right, that's when the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, so I talk about that actually in the first book, about toxic employees, because interestingly enough, your toxic employees usually are outperformers. So I like to use the analogy in sports, and when you think about toxic and great athletes, wide receivers come to mind historically in the NFL. Don't know what it is, but they demand the ball, command the ball. Bad locker room guys, but everybody wants to have them until they experience the toxic stuff in the locker room, and you start to realize that you can't win a championship with that. So you've got to cordon them off or cut them loose.
And because you get a cancer in your organization, and it grows.
Mm-hmm.
that person can affect a lot of different people. And that's your message.
Yeah, and look, with respect to toxic, one of the questions that we talk about in the first book is, if you're interviewing, are you better off trying to hire a rock star or avoid the toxic? Most people think, oh, I want to hire the rock star. The truth of the matter is, some Harvard guys did some research on it and demonstrated that you're actually better off avoiding the toxic employee over the long run than looking for the rock star.
So when you're going out to hire somebody, you have your ground rules, you have your culture set. You're hiring for that culture.
Absolutely.
And then when you have somebody that's in your organization that is against that culture, that toxic employee, you've got to expedite that person out.
Yeah, you can't tolerate it because everybody sees that you tolerate it, and then they recognize that bad behavior is acceptable, and then you've got a downward spiral.
And do you find that consistent? Do you find that in when you talk about this on your podcast, when you interview your guests?
Yeah. True, absolutely. Yeah, that's a recurring theme.
Do you have some clients that maybe aren't as successful, and you get that sense that they're not doing that? They're not getting rid of that toxic employee?
I think that they have challenges around that because they love the productivity piece. Yep. And they're still stuck in the rationalization mindset of, well, if we can just try to rehabilitate this person, and you can rehabilitate some of them. But after you've done a certain number of things, at some point, you've got what you got.
And you've got to draw that line and say, that's it.
It's incumbent upon you as a leader to do that.
So it's funny to hear a numbers guy, an accountant. I'm
not an accountant. Don't you ever call me an accountant. Some of my best friends are accountants, though.
But you have like an accounting background. You have to be a business
well, I've had accounting training, but the degrees are in finance and economics. And professional designations, but I'm not an accountant.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Yeah, it's important that you know that. They're going to hate me back at the shop for that.
I was thinking that when you were saying it.
Yeah, no.
So as a finance guy,
thank you.
To have the personal aspect, the individual aspect of a company, it's unusual.
Yeah,
I think it is.
That's what I've been told too. But look, I got frustrated. What happened, the first article was sort of born out of frustration. I'm sure you've heard the concept of working for leaders who are managers by spreadsheet, where the only thing that matters for your employee is the numbers.
I've been there.
Yeah, and trying to get somebody promoted, but the numbers didn't line up. But if you don't know this individual day to day, you don't know what their contributions are, you can't assess the intangibles, you don't know how truly valuable they are if you're only looking at numbers on a spreadsheet.
But I assume you're talking about smaller groups. How about somebody that is an international with thousands of employees?
Mm-hmm.
How is that when they're looking to cut and slash to get to a bottom line? To meet a stock price.
Yeah.
Is that similar?
Unfortunately, that happens every day, right? In those larger organizations, so I'll give you an example, and I'm not going to mention any names to protect the innocent, but large accounting firm that is pretty well known for great culture in general. When you talk to some of the people in the local offices, they say, yeah, it's great that we've got this reputation and brand for that, but we don't see it in our office. And that's why it's incumbent upon, as I said before, everybody's got to get that little shot of corporate Kool-Aid. And you hear it all the time. Joe over here in the Raleigh office, for example, didn't get the memo. And their culture isn't the same as what it may be like in San Diego. So leadership and culture, it's all local.
So, and you've got to be consistent. The leader has to get that amongst the different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what if you were going to write book 3? What would be the next message?
That's a lot of pressure. If there was going to be a book 3, I would think it would be a continuation of the second book with more case studies and examples of companies that are doing it the right way and what the impact has been. If there was going to be a book 3, please don't commit me to this. That's a lot of work.
No, I didn't commit to anything. There's no written document here committing you to anything.
Okay, because people ask, would you ever want to write a book? And the answer is no. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
The good news is these were just passion projects, so it felt like fun. It wasn't work.
Who published your book?
I'm self-published.
Okay.
I talked to a bunch of different publishing companies, and as you know, it can be very, very expensive.
Yes.
And this was about a message. This wasn't about trying to create a marketing plan and generating sales or anything like that. It was about trying to change the world a little bit. As corny as that sounds, it's trying to make a dent in the universe.
Yeah, but I understand that thought process. If you get one person, change one person, you're better off.
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to do with your podcasts, with your books, with the message. That's why I have you on here.
Appreciate that.
To try to get that message out there that you can run a successful business by focusing on the people.
Yeah, and all people have to do is just look to you. I mean, you're a poster child for that, man.
No, I'm not. But I do believe that if you take care of your people, they will end up taking care of the business and you.
Yeah.
And it's reciprocal. And it's very important to do that and to be part of your people's lives and to care for them.
Yeah.
And it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and sometimes, it's a one-way street where the leader is looking for them. They're not looking for their people.
Oh, so true. I would walk through fire for the ones that led with empathy and respect and appreciation. Yeah.
So you want to? Is there anything else that you want to tell my audience about your mission and Behind the Numbers, the podcast? Where can they find it?
Yeah, sure. So if anybody's interested in connecting with me, I'm always happy to have a conversation. You can find me on LinkedIn. If they're interested in the firm, Haefele Flanagan, our website is hfco.com. Behind the Numbers, you can find it anywhere you get your podcast. You can find it on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, anywhere you stream. And the books you can find on Amazon, or you can go to newroi.com. And for folks out there, if this message resonates and you're on LinkedIn, there's a group called the New ROI, Return on Individuals. It's a group of like-minded people from around the world that believe that people are your most valuable asset. So I invite you guys to join. Just click on join that group and be a part of the tribe.
David, thank you very much. And hopefully that you join David and his tribe of Behind the Numbers on LinkedIn and follow his podcast and pick up his book.
Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
David.
Thank you.
All right.